And as we all know, tackling homophobia and transphobia and those other sort of stigmas, when they're reduced, our mental health improves. And Sarah, I know that ACON does a lot of work in regional and rural New South Wales. What are some of the challenges specific to people in these areas, and what can groups in these areas, but I guess also in metro areas, learn from a group like Queer Family?
Well, I guess, I mean, we're hearing from community members themselves, Evadne and Holly, but I have a privilege of working across New South Wales with my teams. We have an office in Lismore and another one in Newcastle, but we do outreach across the state. And what we're seeing is a real, we call it almost the rainbow wave effects happening across regional areas. It's really beautiful. We've gone from having, 1 year, 12 different Mardi Gras or Pride events. And this year, if we hadn't have had the COVID, we were almost hitting the 30. But that hasn't stopped people. People were taking it online. People were doing smaller, COVID safe initiatives. It's wonderful. I guess what we see in regional areas is, Rainbow Queer Families have touched on this, is what can be beautiful is the small connectedness of everyone knowing everyone, but that can also be a big challenge, particularly if you're forming your identity and you're trying to work out who are the safe people for me to be around, what services do I feel I can access where I'm not going to bump into my, my nan, my aunt, someone that I went to school with that bullied me, etc. So often it's the privacy and confidentiality and finding a safe place, and that safety within community and within your own chosen families, but also feeling safe and comfortable to be yourselves within the broader society of that township. And I think what we've seen though in regional areas is a real embracing of allies coming along. We saw the most incredible voting that happened with marriage equality across regional areas where, it was all assumed it would have been no votes, but they were the highest votes. They were higher than the metro areas. So what you're seeing, I think, is a real move towards wanting to embrace difference and diversity, which is brilliant. But that's not to say, as Aidan touched on, there are service barriers. There's not as many services around. It's hard to know where can I access, where am I going to get a good experience, and we really rely on word of mouth. And we know that unfortunately, when someone's particularly accessing support for their mental health, if it's not a good first experience, it really impacts whether they come back again and what their next steps are. So really in regional areas, it's really crucial that people are understanding identities and the diversity of identities and how rich they are, but in a way that's embracing and welcoming and goes at the pace of the person themselves, that respects that privacy. I think what we're really seeing, which is wonderful, is more and more visibility in regional areas and, in broader society as well. I mean, we've had very few role models. If you look in the mainstream media, I mean, how our communities and members are depicted, unfortunately, we're often the victims of crime, or we're written out of series really early, or we're very stereotyped. So it's really wonderful to see groups like Queer Families really giving that visibility of, every day ordinary people are part of our communities and we're richer for it.
Yeah, definitely. And having such a wide variety of activities and different forms of visibility in those communities really speaks to that.
Definitely. And I think the one thing that we really hear of is our communities will seek out information where they can find it. And so it's up to all of us to try to make that information available and accessible. And sometimes that isn't in your own township. Sometimes it's going to the town nearby or accessing things a bit more remotely. So yeah, it's about putting the word out as much as.
Yeah. And so, with those sort of things in mind and, talking about different services, what do you feel have been some of the challenges in making Queer Family a reality?
Well, obviously funding is probably the biggest barrier because when you have funding, you can address some of the other barriers. So coming from Sydney, where I used to run a social enterprise and I was able to access funding quite readily, I was quite shocked at how difficult it was to get funding in a regional area. And also what I've really noticed is that people are less willing to fund LGBTQIA+ projects compared to what I used to try and get funding for. So, we're in competition with the koala group, for example, and we all love the koalas, they're very important, but that's just an example of they'll get the funding and we don't. So, so funding's definitely the biggest challenge, and distance, which also ties in with transport, is probably the next biggest challenge. So we sometimes have people who, I know we have people who don't have cars. We don't have a reasonable public transport system here, and particularly on the weekends, which is when we try and do events. And so what that means is that we spend a lot of time scrambling around trying to find lifts for people. Sometimes people have missed out because we haven't been able to do that. Trying to get someone from Lismore over to, Bruns, for example. And so if we had funding, we'd be able to address that issue. So, distance, transport, and funding. And I think the other thing is also being a volunteer. So we're all volunteers. We all give a lot of ourselves, but we're also all LGBTQIA+ people. Many of us have lived experience in mental health needs. So we don't necessarily have a lot of spoons ourselves, but because we love our community and we're really committed to this project, a lot of us are putting a lot of time and energy into it. But when you don't have funding and when you are relying on volunteers, that's quite challenging.
Yeah, it can really keep scraping the bottom of an empty barrel in some ways.
Can I just echo that? We see that across regional areas. Our community groups come together, and they're volunteers, they lead it, and one of the risks we have is potentially burning out wonderful groups because they're trying to be everything to everyone, which is brilliant. And I think the sustainability of those groups is something that ACON's very mindful of, and I think when we look at local government have a role to play, definitely. Other service providers, people who can partner and ally, and I think that's where Way Ahead's grants and awards and things help, raise the profile to help make those opportunities happen, because it's all done out of love, really.
Yeah. And obviously there's a lot of those challenges, but you're still going and you're going quite strong. What would you say are some of the prouder moments for you?
For me, I think one of the most beautiful moments was when I got to read the raw data from the research we did. And it made me cry. There was quote after quote after quote of how we have changed people's lives. And that was it was beautiful. I knew we were making a difference, but to see it written down and just over and over and over again, and it's just like, I don't know if I'd be alive without you. It's just like, whoa, okay, that's amazing.
I'm really proud of the way we all really adapt and all really work to include everyone and what they're going through. And so there's a sort of awareness perhaps around some of the sort of people who are volunteering more about what's happening. And so how to accommodate the person with really strong social anxiety who's finally come here for the first time, and how to work with that, or the person who's in recovery when we are actually having something, at an event where other people are drinking, and a real, I'm really proud of the way we actively work to really make it work for as many people as we can, as often as we can, and the way that we make sure that money is never a barrier. Like we make that happen too.
Yeah, that radical, like you were saying before, the radical active inclusivity is really at the core of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think we provide a bit of a buffer from minority stress for the community and for ourselves, and I think that is, that's a long-term effect on your mental health, and it's a toll, and that's something we really want to reduce. People's even people's that minority background stress. If we can just address that with more joy, more community, more validity, more acceptance, that's one of my sort of main goals.
And what does winning the award mean for you and for the community?
Well, other than bragging rights, which, is just, it's very exciting. I got to get the little winners thing to put at the bottom of my email. And, I've been sending emails that I don't even need to send. No, it was really, really wonderful to get recognition, particularly from, a statewide service. We are often overlooked in the regions. So it's really exciting to get that recognition. The award money will go a long way. I think, it's pretty clear that we can run on the sniff of an oily rag. So, that award money is going to be really, really well used. And it's just so lovely to be recognised. It's really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We are at the end of our time, unfortunately. I would love to continue chatting with you for a full hour, but we are at the end of our time. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Sarah, especially. And of course, thank you so much to ACON for sponsoring this award. It's incredible. It's in its second year. And it's been a wonderful process working with ACON and seeing the incredible work that's being done. And of course, congratulations, Holly and Aidan, and to the whole queer family. It's been so wonderful to learn more about your work and hear about your program. So thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for joining us. Don't forget, tune in tomorrow at midday for our chat with the winners of the Aboriginal Social and Emotional Wellbeing Award. Don't forget, you can check out mentalhealthmonth.org.au to learn more about Mental Health Month and, of course, all the winners of the Mental Health Matters Awards. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.